From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns. And now here's your host, Michael Fries.
Thank you for listening to RoadSigns, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. Needless to say, we're experiencing a shift in the business landscape, and the trucking industry is no different. As the fourth quarter is upon us, fleets are keeping mind of their costs for the future, especially when it comes to new and used trucks. One of the growing concerns of this year that's been on the minds of owners and managers has been truck leasing. Owners and managers have found that leasing, especially full-service leasing, provides several benefits and savings to their bottom lines. So in this episode, we'll ask, how beneficial has truck leasing been to the industry this year, and why is it becoming more appealing to fleet owners? For these answers, we'll speak with Jim Lager, Senior Vice President of Penske Truck Leasing, later in the program. But first, we'll get into the data of the how and why with our first guest, Al Barner, Senior Vice President, Strategic Fleet Solutions at Fleet Advantage, who stopped by to discuss the topic and more at our Transport Topics Roadshow booth during the TMC Fall meeting in Cleveland in September this year. Here's our interview with Al.
Welcome to the show, Al.
Hey, thanks, Mike. It's good to be here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Well, I'm glad to be here too. It's my hometown. So.
Me too.
Just to let everybody know, for this recording, we are at the Technology and Maintenance Council here in Cleveland, Ohio, for this particular episode and interview. So, Al, let's get right into it. As Fleet Advantage does every year, they release the industry benchmark survey, and in that survey, the biggest takeaway from that is the four biggest motivators of new trucks. And, out of that four, you have maintenance, repair, fuel, driver retention. And those percentages were pretty much level for the year prior. But with leasing, that was the greatest increase from 14% to 31%.
That's correct.
While those other factors remained steady and, the leasing was increased, my very complex question for you is why?
So, yeah, we've definitely seen a trend towards more aggressive trade cycles, and I think that's why we've seen an increase in lease. So when you look at the total life cycle cost, you're getting better fuel economy year over year on new equipment. You're seeing maintenance trends go up dramatically once you get beyond that warranty period. And so when you start to look at those total life cycle costs, the cash flows on a lease are normally less expensive than they would be in an ownership model. The other important factor here is when you start to be more aggressive with those trades, you've got to be very good at remarketing late model, lower mileage equipment. And again, that tends to lean towards a lease because the lessors are very good at remarketing equipment. You've got to be very good at being able to sell 4 to 5 year old trucks with less than 500,000 miles, which, by the way, is what we advocate to our clients. We believe that they should be exiting out of trucks before the warranty period expires. And when you look at those life cycle costs that you just mentioned, better fuel economy, lower maintenance and repair, then the economics start to favor the lease model, which is why I think we're seeing a trend towards leasing. The other factor is in our industry, as you're aware, we're always talking about driver retention and hiring, and new equipment definitely lends towards those factors as far as being able to recruit drivers and retain those drivers.
One of the things that you're talking about, driver retention, it kind of all ties in. That's one thing that I'm finding within the industry. Whether you're talking about, brake parts or just some data insights, always comes back to, that driver retention and somewhat of, driver recruitment and getting, the right driver in the fold and these fleets to be, more effective with more employees, of course. One of the things I want to talk about with leasing, too, is just kind of with the popularity of it, with the huge increase. Is FSLs. I'm pretty sure that plays a big part in it. I'm sure in the survey you had 20% feel like they're trapped, but I'm pretty sure that 80% feel that's the FSLs, the full service leases, are a perfect remedy for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and for some clients that could be a very good solution for them. We just learned yesterday in one of the presentations that Penske, their average client is 80% of their clients are 5 trucks or less. So those smaller fleets, the full service lease model works very, very well. What we're starting to see is that some of the larger fleets who had been engaged in a full service model are starting to unbundle and controlling both the maintenance and finance. So they may very well continue to use the same maintenance provider, but they separate the financing from the maintenance provider, and it gives them a little bit more control for two reasons. One, if they have a flexible lease program, such as the one Fleet Advantage provides, they can exit out of the equipment at the most cost-effective time. But they can also make sure that they leverage those maintenance solutions by location and actually bring down their costs, because, again, with a more aggressive trade cycle, if you're staying within that warranty period, those guaranteed maintenance solutions tend to be less expensive if you're exiting out within that warranty period. So we see a combination of both, where some of the larger fleets are being more aggressive with understanding their total cost of ownership, and when you separate that finance piece from the maintenance, they could start to run the economics on their own.
One thing I also want to touch upon what you were mentioning with the trade cycles, and earlier this year you spoke upon that, with fleets understanding the trade cycles.
Yes, sir.
And one thing that really stuck out to me was you said that fleets need to make a shift to, you're a proponent of that,
Yes.
where fleets should make a shift from functional obsolescence to economic obsolescence.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that and just kind of elaborate on that and how fleets can realize that economic obsolescence?
Yeah, so now we have this explosion of big data. You're able to pull data from your shop management systems. You're getting onboard computer systems data from fuel and mileage, and when you start to aggregate that data into a useful format, you can see that there's a tipping point in regards to, at one time prior to the emission standards, if you had a good maintenance solution or a good shop, you can continue to run trucks out to 1 million miles. Now we're starting to see that functional obsolescence from the perspective that, can you still run those trucks? Absolutely. But there's an economic tipping point where it makes economic sense to put a new truck in as opposed to running the old truck. So we're seeing that very distinctly in the data that we monitor, and I think a lot of the large fleets, when they have access to that data, they're starting to see that as well. And again, that kind of leads them into that more aggressive trade cycle, which is that's really what we feel is the genesis of all of these different changes that we're seeing within the industry. In addition to that, we're also seeing that the safety features such as lane departure, collision avoidance, those features are starting to become standard on new equipment. So when you start to become more aggressive with those trades, you're getting the benefit of better fuel economy on new, lower maintenance and repair costs, and also the safety features that are now standard in that equipment. So the combination then plays over to the fact that if you're out trying to hire and recruit drivers, one of the things that we consistently see in our benchmarking survey is that the three things that are important to them are compensation, benefits, and new equipment. So all of those things tend to tie together.
Okay. When you talk to fleets about this, you had mentioned that you did, but is this sort of like it's kind of like a matrix, like red pill, blue pill thing with just telling basically how you explain it is sort of like the could and the should. How long could you have this truck? How long should you have this truck? Explain it to them. Is it kind of like the sky's opening for them with?
Well, I think when you show them with their own data, those economics, as far as what's your maintenance costs once you get beyond that warranty period, and if you can show them by year, make, and model, and within our Atlas system, we're able to break it down all the way down to transmission, engine type, things of that nature. When you start to run those economics for them, and you use those different components, what's my fuel burn on a certain model year, what's my maintenance and repair costs, what's my finance cost or depreciation model look like on those assets. When you start to aggregate that data together, you can put together a truck-by-truck P&L. So one of the things that we're very good at Fleet Advantage is bridging that gap between the operations team and the finance folks, because if you don't structure the depreciation model appropriately up front, fleets tend to run those trucks beyond their useful life, because if you structure, let's say, a 7-year to 20% residual, but the fuel and maintenance data show that you should be exiting out in year 4 or 5, because it's not properly booked, those fleets tend to have to run those trucks out 7 years. So all of those metrics kind of play together, and that's why we are very, very vigilant about monitoring cost of funds, resale values, fuel consumption, maintenance and repair. And a lot of the fleets are very good at doing that themselves, and they're starting to see that within their own data, that it does make economic sense to exit out 4 to 5 years, no more than 500,000 miles.
I know you're a busy man now, so before I let you go and everything, let's kind of switch gears to from that benchmark survey to
Yes, sir.
to electric vehicles
Yes.
for Class 8 trucks, of course. Most fleet owners are slowly warming up to the possibility of purchasing one. In the survey, 55% say that they are considering buying one in the next 5 to 10 years, while 33% say they're going to buy it within the next 1 or 3. But as we all know, diesel's still king. So,
Yes.
what have or can fleets do to confidently procure electrical vehicles while balancing issues, that are remaining for their diesel fleets that they already have?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something I get asked frequently, and I think one of the things that they can do is start to attend conferences like TMC, because there's a lot of good educational sessions that explain what the impact of electric will be to our industry. And one of the things that continues to come out in our sessions is the fact that there's a lot of infrastructure that's required to make that conversion. So one of the things that we've learned over the last couple of days is that the infrastructure itself is going to take longer than potentially the delivery of equipment. So if you go out, for those fleets that are looking at electric vehicles, they should start now looking at how they're going to modify their infrastructure so that they can accommodate the charging systems and things of that nature. So definitely very excited about the future of electric vehicles. But we do know that clean diesel technology is getting better and better every year, so we think that there's still a pretty long runway for clean diesel. But there will be some niches for the electric vehicles, and that's obviously very exciting for our industry. It'll ultimately become more and more efficient, and you never know how this how long this transition is going to take. But definitely excited about it.
We've been speaking with Al Barner, Senior Vice President, Strategic Fleet Solutions at Fleet Advantage. Al, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you for making us smarter.
Thank you, Michael. Have a great day. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
From time to time, an issue commands so much of the industry's attention that it requires a deeper dive, a resource readers can turn to, a Transport Topics special report. We're turning our attention to another big issue, electrification and the key factors that will drive this industry trend. In every case, we're working to provide our readers with information, analysis, and clarity on key issues confronting fleets. One comprehensive resource packed with insights that can give you the edge. Transport Topics invites you to learn more about our special reports. To reserve your copy of the latest special report, visit ttn.ws/electrification.
Next on Road Signs, we'll dive a little bit more into the leasing aspect of things with our next guest, Jim Lager, Senior Vice President for Penske Truck Leasing. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Well, good morning, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on, Jim. I really want to dive into the leasing aspect a little bit further. From my last conversation with Al Barner of Fleet Advantage, I had spoken to him at the TMC fall meeting in Cleveland, and Fleet Advantage had just released their industry benchmark survey. One of the biggest motivators for new trucks were maintenance, repair, fuel, driver retention, and leasing. And out of the year over year, leasing experienced the greatest increase from 2020, from 31% to 14%, while the other factors remained steady. And I asked Al the reasonings behind this, but I kind of want to get your perspective. Being a leasing service provider, what factors are contributing to this increase from where you're standing?
Sure. Well, glad to address that. I think in the macro, if you will, you hear this term VUCA environment kicked around a lot, and we're certainly living in those kind of times. And I think the more volatility or uncertainty, or chaos that's erupting out in the marketplace, fleet operators need a partner. They need an established partner that has processes and procedures and scale and these things. So I think that's one of the bigger things that's driving it. What we see most recently that we haven't historically seen are, difficulty getting new vehicles. The delivery windows are way out. The manufacturers are backed up, part COVID related, part supply chain, part labor. There's a lot of factors there. They all seem to have converged. to really delay delivery of new vehicles. So I think that's bringing more fleet operators to look at leasing and look at outsourcing and finding a partner that can handle everything from the engineering and specing of the vehicle to getting a truck actually delivered, and then once that vehicle is delivered and running, keeping it operating at an optimal level. Leasing operations provide interim vehicles while those new vehicles on order. They provide substitute vehicles when those vehicles are down for maintenance related reasons. So there's just a lot of things I think that leasing companies do to kind of bundle all those things together that fleet operators have to do or have to experience and just put it in one place. One contact, one company to deal with on all of those things, whether it's, again, specing and ordering a vehicle, to maintaining that vehicle, to disposing of it at the end. And that's something leasing companies, do on a daily basis.
I mean, that's, you were just explaining just the factors for that increase. And it's such a substantial increase from 2020. I would figure that the last mile delivery segment plays a big role in that. What type of impact have you seen from this particular play?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, if you look at what happened, when the country of the world shut down in COVID, we all had to change the way we did things. And one of those certainly was the way we bought goods and procured things. And final mile just, it was already on a steady trend upward, but it just exploded, obviously, during that out of necessity. And the good news is, companies were ready to do that, to handle that, to fill that void, to ramp up in order to do that. And that's certainly driving more fleet operators to leasing again. In the short term, they need rental trucks. They need trucks to jump into that space. And then, on a more permanent basis, what I just described with ordering and getting vehicles here and then keeping them maintained and going. So, I think that trend will continue as we, beyond lockdowns and shutdowns and things like that, because it's a convenience factor. And people want things delivered in that manner. And I think, leasing companies have made that shift into smaller vehicles, which is what you typically see, with last mile. So, we can certainly handle anything tractor trailer, the biggest of the big, all the way down to, delivery vans, small delivery vans. And again, we do see a big push and a lot of, change coming in that area as well.
One of the things, Jim, that you had mentioned was the organizing of the chaos that fleet operators are managing and having that established partner when it comes to leasing. What are some of the feedbacks from your customers that you're hearing on the benefits and even the issues of full service leasing? I mean, it really sounds like a one-stop shop for fleet operators to have that lack of risk, I guess, the mitigated risk in all of this. What are they saying? I mean, what are the benefits and what are the issues of this?
And that's a big one. You're exactly right, Mike. The risk mitigation aspect of what we do. You shift some of that risk onto a leasing partner. Certainly a big one. I would say flexibility. Again, the ability to change vehicles if needed, to go up or down in size based on changes to a customer's operation. I mentioned a lot of things about uptime and keeping vehicles maintained and up and running, or providing substitute vehicles when those vehicles are down. So I don't know that there's anyone, and I'm in the business, so I'm a little biased. I don't know that I'm going to give you any downsides, but there are a lot of benefits to leasing, and it is a one-stop shop. It is a turnkey type deal. Basically, you just put the driver in it and go make your deliveries. We handle everything else. Leasing companies handle everything else. The vehicle cleaning, obviously all of the maintenance, the legalization, the keeping that truck, adhering to any regulations in state or federal. So, there's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of things involved with operating a fleet or a single vehicle that is difficult for somebody to do if they're not doing it every day. And I think that's what leasing companies get really good at it, really efficient at it, and that efficiency passes through to the customer ultimately, in the form of a lower total cost to operate. So I think those are some of the trends and some of the benefits for leasing.
In times like these, it's crucial to stay informed. Transport Topics is offering all the information you need to make business decisions in these unprecedented times. And in the wake of the many event cancellations and group gatherings, TT ensures a virtual way to consume business content and conversation. To join the conversation and stay ahead of the news, follow Transport Topics on all social outlets or by visiting ttn.ws/stay informed.
Speaking of trends and just the issue of having full service leasing, the studies that are out there right now have projected the value of the truck rental segment is going to increase dramatically in the next several years. Just from where you're standing, how will Penske and other FSL providers? Jim, I'm asking you to put on your analyst hat right now. So, but how will those providers build the scale? How do you build the scale to satisfy the growing demand of full service leasing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I agree, and we've seen tremendous growth over the decades, but really seeing it in the last several years. And out of the Great Recession, I think a pretty big once the country recovered and started moving forward, we saw exponential growth, and then again the pandemic and everything that's happened in the last 12 to 18 months is continuing to push in that way. So the way we've reacted, and I think many others in the industry, is you got to continue to enter into new markets, build facilities. It's a very capital intensive business. Facilities that you used to could build for $1 million or $6, $8, $10 million now. So it's capital intensive, but we continue to either new ground up builds in new markets, or in major markets where we need more capacity. We continue to expand and upgrade facilities, existing facilities to handle more business. Of course, we get more productive and more efficient over time too, and technology is a great assister in that regard. So continually trying to be more efficient, to work more hours, to have 3-shift operations where you can leverage that facility and use that facility around the clock. So there are a lot of ways to increase capacity, and leasing companies are doing that. But again, very capital intensive, takes a lot of effort, a lot of foresight. We do a lot, as well as our competitors in the space, do a lot of on-site maintenance where we actually go on the customer site, either in their building or with a mobile repair unit, mobile maintenance unit. And we see a lot of growth in that area. So that gives leasing companies more reach. It's more convenient for customers. So that's another way to increase capacity and be able to reach more customers. But this, I think it will continue as more fleet operators see the benefit and see the ease of doing business with a leasing partner, and how it can free them up to focus on their core business, what they do. And in most cases, that's not operating vehicles. They're kind of the unfortunate necessity to that. And so that's one of the things, I think, one of the real benefits, and one of the reasons you continue to see this outsourcing is because these companies need to focus on their customer and what they're manufacturing or what they're doing or delivering, as opposed to focusing on trying to keep a fleet of trucks up and running.
You spoke about growth quite a bit in that particular answer. And before I let you go, I just kind of wanted to ask an overall question about the future of the leasing market, and where it's going to head in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, but more specifically, are there any types of partnerships with automotive companies that could be beneficial to the growth of the leasing market? And as you just mentioned, providing customers quality service. How does that all work?
Yeah, so I'm careful about predicting the future after what happened in early last year, because I don't think anybody could have predicted that or seen that coming. And then then what happened as a result, nobody really saw coming, I think, either. So I'll try to stay away from that. But I do see continued growth. Again, I think we've talked about the many benefits and reasons why. In terms of partnerships, there are a lot of new companies entering the space, whether that's new equipment manufacturers or component manufacturers. We see electric playing a bigger role, autonomous vehicles coming maybe a little further down the road, but things are changing and there are new players involved. And our approach, and I think again this is something that leasing companies have the scale and the ability to do, is to stay close to that, is to work with all these different providers, to learn about the technology, to understand it. And we're in that place right now. Let's understand this better than anybody else. And again, it's hard to do if you're operating a fleet of trucks, to get exposed to it and get close to it and be able to use it. We're running a large number of electric vehicles right now, and we're learning, and and we're developing maintenance processes and procedures around that, and how we'll operate these vehicles, how we'll procure them and sell them at the end, and those kind of things. So, certainly changing, and we continue to work with the traditional OEs, the traditional equipment manufacturers, who are have an all-out effort going on in this space, and putting a lot of resources at that. And then as well as the newer one, the startups and these other companies that are coming on. We want to understand the entire market. We want to know what everybody's doing, so that we can have a front row seat and be part of the solutions. And then when they're ready, when it's the right time, we bring them to our customers, or we bring them to the marketplace and say, this is something we think you should try. This is something we think will make your operation better or make you more efficient at what you do. So it is certainly changing, and changing more rapidly than I've ever seen the transportation or equipment marketplace change before. But it's exciting. It's really exciting to see, and trucks are evolving at a pace, putting them more online with the passenger cars, the cars that we drive every day, and that wasn't the case until just a few short years ago. So I think that's great for opening up truck driving as a profession to more people that can do that, because the vehicles will be more similar to operating a passenger car or light truck. So just a lot of excitement that comes along with that.
It's one thing that I find in covering this industry, no matter what we're talking about, be it we're talking about autonomous vehicles, or in this case, we're talking about full service leasing. It all connects to that driver shortage, that tech shortage, and
Mhm.
to see those things intertwined, and just the demand of full service leasing playing a part in that tech shortage to help fleet operators in that regard when it comes to hiring techs, or provide that particular service where they have a lack of technicians.
Mike, you're absolutely right. Fleet operators are struggling enough to hire drivers and keep them trained and going. So technicians another factor in that. And again, I think leasing companies help with the driver issue by providing well maintained late model equipment. Drivers want to drive. They don't want to be sitting on the side of the road broken down or in a repair facility or anything like that. They want to be operating the vehicle. That's what they're being paid to do. And again, I think leasing companies, provide a distinct advantage when it comes to uptime and keeping vehicles on the road and operating, and therefore driving customer satisfaction and putting drivers in the latest equipment, the newest technology, if you will.
We've been speaking with Jim Lager, Senior Vice President for Penske Truck Leasing. Jim, this was a great conversation, and thank you for coming on to RoadSigns.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation as well, and good luck to you.
Did you know you can ask Alexa to open Transport Topics? In just 1 minute, you will hear the biggest trucking headlines of that day. Be prepared and start your morning off right with Transport Topics.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our original question. How beneficial has truck leasing been to the industry this year, and why is it becoming more appealing to fleet owners? First, we'd like to thank our guests, Jim Lager of Penske and Al Barner of Fleet Advantage, for joining us in this episode. As we heard from Barner, the leap of faith toward leasing is a considerable one, and the attraction of full-service leasing is hard to resist for truck companies, startups, and other fleets looking to trim costs. That trend is projected to continue as OEMs and other partners plug into the leasing space and offer such services. Speaking with Lager, we learned that companies like Penske are noticing the growth in full-service leasing and will continue to scale up to satisfy the demand. Time will tell whether this is a new normal or not, but with the many ongoing shifts in the trucking industry, we should expect to see fleets adjust for the new year. If you enjoyed this episode of RoadSigns, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with the RoadSigns team, or reach me on Twitter at Michael V. Freeze. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. We will read them and respond daily. And of course, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of RoadSigns. Until then, I'm Michael Freeze. Thank you for listening.